I would like to remind everyone that this conference call is being recorded today, Wednesday, February 23rd, 2011 at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll now turn the conference over to Ms. Iris Bisson, Program Manager. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Ovarian Cancer Canada welcomes you to this session of our telephone and online education series for women with ovarian cancer and their caregivers. Today's session, Research Updates on Ovarian Cancer, will be given by Dr. Barbara van der Heijden, who is a researcher at the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute and the Corinne Boyer Chair in Ovarian Cancer Research. For those of you who registered, you have received the PowerPoint presentation that you can follow the teleconference with. I am Iris Pizon, Program Manager of Ovarian Cancer Canada. OCC endeavors to provide women with ovarian cancer and their caregivers the information that they need. We hope that you will find this session interesting and that you will address your questions to Dr. van der Heijden. To encourage listeners to ask questions at the end of the 30 to 40 minute presentation, we ask that you just give a first name. Feel free to provide the operator with an alias if you wish. The previous telephone education sessions are available on YouTube at www.youtube.com/ovariancancercanada. Videos will now be posted in 15-minute segments and ordered in parts to make it easy for you to listen and later return to where you left off. We hope that you can help us with your feedback. An evaluation form will be sent to attendees via email or regular mail. And now, please welcome Dr. Barbara van der Heijden.
Thank you, Iris. And thank you all for having an interest in the latest research that is going on. I will be focusing primarily on research that has impacted, obviously, ovarian cancer and ovarian cancer patients, but not restricting myself to what's going on in Canada because many of the advances we have, both in terms of treatment and new approaches for early detection, are coming out of the international field, and so the presentation has been crafted in a way that we are trying to capture all the latest advances in research, particularly those that seem to be most promising around the world. I do need to give credit to Dr. Emery Mesmesson, who gave a similar presentation in French a week ago. The two of us did have a discussion on what we thought were the most interesting elements of research taking place related to ovarian cancer in advance of her presentation, and I have simply taken her slides and made some adaptations, and so you will see that she is recognized as the originator of these slides, including her organization, SHUM, and mine as the University of Ottawa. The presentation is divided into essentially 6 slides, the first 6 being introduction to ovarian cancer. I thought it would be good to make sure that we are all on the same page, that we have a similar basic understanding of what ovarian cancer is. And I apologize to anyone who is much more educated than I am in terms of the classifications of the disease, but I think it's a good thing to do to start to make sure that we all understand and are working with the same terminologies. The remaining portion of the talk, which will be the larger portion, will be the highlights of the 4 different types of research that takes place and what I think are the most important or most promising areas of investigation in those 4 domains. So the second slide of the presentation, entitled Causes of Cancer or Cancer Lottery, I think is an emphasis on the fact that there are a number of different factors that cause risk for the development of cancer in general and ovarian cancer in particular. And these fall into 2 broad categories, one being genetic factors and one being environmental factors. And so when we speak about genetic factors, probably the most well-known, well-established genetic risk factor for ovarian cancer is the breast cancer-associated gene BRCA1 and its partner BRCA2. These are 2 genes that are known to be associated with risk of both breast and ovarian cancer, and mutations in these genes do increase the risk of developing one or the other or both of those cancers. There are a large number of environmental factors that have an impact on the risk of ovarian cancer as well. Probably one of the most well-established is exposure to hormones, in that use of oral contraceptives actually suppresses the risk of ovarian cancer, decreases the risk quite substantially, such that the longer the use, the higher the reduction or the lower risk of ovarian cancer. And in contrast, the use of hormones as hormone replacement therapy for menopausal women tends to increase the risk modestly, with the exception of estrogen therapy alone, which tends to increase the risk quite more substantially. So these are just two examples of environmental factors, lifestyle factors, that can increase the risk. And a lot of the environmental factors probably fall under the category of the ones we cannot control. That is the water we drink, the air we breathe, the food we eat, where these are factors of our everyday lives that probably impinge on our risk of cancer in general. Although I have to say I spent a great deal of time about a year and a half ago researching the literature when I was asked to write a review article on environmental factors and their impact on ovarian cancer risk. And it was quite a short article because there are very, very few studies done to identify environmental factors and their and how they impact the risk of ovarian cancer. So we do know that they exist. They certainly have an impact on the development of other types of cancers, very likely have an impact on ovarian cancer, but the number of clear studies that provide clear evidence is really very limited, and this is an area of investigation that should be expanded. But the term cancer lottery is one that is used to mostly to emphasize the fact that much of what we do has little bearing on the risk of ovarian cancer. Most of our risk comes from factors that we cannot control, those being the genetic and environmental factors. And so there is, as I mentioned, some lifestyle factors that we can implement or change to modify that risk a little bit, but to a certain extent we gamble with the dice that we're dealt with at the time we are born. The slide number 3 focuses on the mortality of the various types of cancers. This is a plot that shows in the yellow bars each different type of cancer, focusing on cancers that appear in women in Canada. The diagram is taken from the Canadian Cancer Statistics document presented by the Canadian Cancer Society. They update this information every year, and it can be found on the web. But you can see that the ovary appears as the fourth cancer from the top. Lung cancers represent about 25-26% of all cancer deaths in Canada in 2010. About 15% of women die of breast cancer, those dying of cancer. 11.4% for colorectal, 5.6% for pancreas, and then you see right after that about 4.9% of cancer deaths are attributed to deaths by ovarian cancer. So it is the highest mortality of all the gynecological cancers. The uterine cancers appear 3 or 4 below that at 2.2% of cancer deaths. Cervix is about 1%. So you can see that ovarian cancer does have the highest mortality of the cancers that occur in the gynecologic system. In women who do develop cancers, there is also often the development of a fluid accumulation in the abdomen called ascites. This happens in about 1/3 of all cases and is really an issue that makes it challenging to treat the disease, not only initially but with recurrent disease, where ascites is a large part of the morbidity that is associated with the progression of ovarian cancer. And most of you, I hope, will know that there are several factors, and probably focusing on 2 in this presentation, that really make the treatment of ovarian cancer a challenge. And the first is that the disease is often diagnosed late in its progression. So we have 4 stages, stage 1 being confined to the ovary, and stage 4 being where it has spread beyond the abdomen to other parts of the body. And most women are diagnosed at stages 3 or 4 where the disease has spread at least beyond the pelvis and often into the abdomen. And so with that widespread disease, the treatment becomes much more of a challenge. This is why the research in this area is so considerably important to try to identify new treatment regimens that might be able to target late-stage disease. The other factor that is lacking in ovarian cancer is early detection. There are currently no reliable systems used for the early detection of ovarian cancer, and I will be coming back to that topic when we talk about the research in that area later on in this presentation. I just also want to summarize at this point in time that although we're looking at a single bar on this plot that says ovary, ovarian cancer is not such a simplistic disease. It is actually very complex with different subtypes, multiple grades, multiple stages, and it is that variability that actually adds to the difficulty in treating this disease in a reliable fashion, because predicting the outcome can be quite a challenge. And some of these subtypes we'll talk about in a few slides. If we move to slide 4, we talk about a number of different subtypes, but about 90% of ovarian cancers are of the subtype called epithelial ovarian cancer. And so the rest of this presentation will focus on that because that is the predominant type of ovarian cancer. And what you see here on this slide is three pictures, 3 photographs that are showing you the 3 classes of epithelial ovarian cancer, the benign on the left, the low malignant potential in the middle, and the malignant shown on the right-hand side. And essentially the key feature that distinguishes these 3 types of ovarian cancer is invasion. Benign tumors have a healthy ability to grow, to have their cells proliferate, but they do not invade other tissues. And so while the tumors can turn out to be quite large, they are not invasive, and therefore removal of a benign tumor usually leads to quite a successful cure. Low malignant potential disease, also called borderline tumors. These borderline tumors have minimal invasive potential, but there is indications in these types of tumors that they could progress. They still are poorly invasive, but they are not completely benign either. So these are ones to watch. They tend to have a fairly good success rate as well because, again, of their relatively poor invasive potential. The final category is malignant, and these ones obviously are the true cancers, the ones that are not only have a strong ability to proliferate, to grow the tumors, but to invade not only the ovary but other tissues as well. Generally speaking, we classify ovarian tumors into 3 grade levels, 1, 2, or 3. That is shifting, and it's highly variable depending on the institution, what system they use to grade tumors. And there is a movement afoot to classify ovarian tumors as simply high grade and low grade, but that is not yet universally done, but there is growing evidence to indicate that a simple classification into high grade and low grade might be sufficient. But for the most part, I think most institutions in Canada are still using a 3-grade system. And then the stage I mentioned earlier, we have stages 1, 2, 3, and 4, where 1 being the stage where the disease is confined to the ovary, and stage 4, where it has progressed and is metastasized, can be found throughout the abdomen and outside the abdomen as well. So these are the more clinically challenging diseases to treat when they have spread away from the ovary.